Trump elected 2027 presidential election will be very hot. Blog post by Jean-Luc Mélenchon on May 14, 2026. This is a historic moment. Trump's visit to China brings a long era to a close. This is because it comes at the very moment when the U.S. is bogged down with no way out in Iran. This is at the heart of a sequence that was supposed to shrine the MAGA Make Gagan plan with customs and threats of territorial annexation of Greenland, Venezuela, Sanzuela. The situation is the opposite of that opened by Nixon's visit to Mao and Zhuan. China was then in economic impasse. The U.S. has surpassed it head and shoulders. At the time, it was a turnaround for the Yukululunas and an attempt to reorganize its mode of world domination. It had a plan, and it implemented it with a conquering manner. Decisions followed one another and were applied without any resistance. August 15, 1971, the dollar is no longer gold-backed. February 21, 1972, Nixon negotiates the agreement in which China agrees to produce at low cost for the world market and to transform its dollar assets into U.S. Treasury bonds. 1974, agreement with the Gulf countries to settle their oil transactions in dollars. 1974 again, Plaza Agreement, which values the dollar against a basket of currencies. The dollar is your problem, but it is our currency. The USA has widely used and abused this reorganization of the world to its advantage. But the advantage acquired has worked over time like a bloodletting. Since then, the USA has further deindustrialized to the benefit of China, and it has lost the absolute control it exercised over South America and Southeast Asia, everywhere, to the advantage of the Chinese presence. It has not won any of the essential wars. It has fought Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. So it has lost them. The de-dollarization of the global economy has taken hold at the rate of a 1% annual decline in central bank dollar reserves. Last week, for the first time, Pakistan issued debt securities denominated in yuan. The Chinese international transaction system is now installed in 57 African states and throughout Southeast Asia. Trump's visit is the moment when the end of the cycle is being written in public between two nations that appear to be equally powerful. But this is only an appearance. China is the world's leading manufacturing nation. At a time when the U.S. Armada is blocked in the Strait of Hormuz, the visit to Beijing is presented as a request for intercession. Trump is therefore coming to eat his hat to obtain help in any form. And the most important thing is to note that this is the plan put forward by the Chinese themselves. They know that the United States, currently in bad shape, is an aggressive power that will seek to extricate itself from the historic impasse in which it has been plagued by renewed violence. China is therefore right not to beat around the bush and to clearly state its priority to maintain world peace by refusing to allow Taiwan to be the pretext for all-out war between superpowers. The coming year will be one of the rebounds from the shockwave produced by the events of these 2 days. If it allows progress, France can help. Otherwise, we must know how to maneuver to avoid disaster. A shattering first week of the Belgian presidential campaign. Everything happened so quickly. The 2,600 endorsements it collected so quickly. In fact, 46 times faster than in 2022. We can then better understand the impact of the two programs through which I presented my candidacy TF1 and Brut. In rebroadcasts and VHX, in total for both sources combined, this represents 45 300 views or 40 times the circulation of largest print media conglomerate in our country. More than the monthly circulation of Liberation. The letter to the people of France has already been distributed in 1.5 million copies. The extracts of my short speech in front of Manuel Bompart's office in Marseille, alongside Clémence Jeté, have been viewed 3,400,000 times. The replay of the program on LCI with Amélie Carver and its extracts have been viewed 1 million times. A mouse. This series of figures shows the reality of a media world divided into two layers. Audiovisual official media is printed on one side and digital on the other. Compilation of the first 12 personal accounts of Insoumis gives a spectacular and significant result. This represents 25 million subscribers and millions of views in this week of launching my candidacy. The most encouraging thing was the dozens of messages from unionist and intellectuals, men and women from all walks of life who are breaking away from the established chaos. Their words of friendship, their brief mote of the youth, encouraging the elders, my turtle mascots, and their 1,001 verbal and visual jokes. We all felt a strange feeling, a sort of gratitude for this momentum with the taste on our lips of a sense of being on the threshold of victory. Everyone around me who's organizing and leading this launch tells me that in 6 days they have rediscovered the atmosphere of the eve of this first round of 2022 before. That night when the rest was taken away from us by 400,000 votes, blocked by left-wing candidates, blocked by less than 5 Paros Tonos Demis. This atmosphere illustrates our success. It is good that all those who made it possible know this too, measure the fruits of their collective work, and so that everyone knows why and where the real battle is being fought to form a popular opinion of combat. What is the official scene worth then? What are the multiple pseudopods of the media octopus and in the hands of the 9 billionaires defending their privilege at the cost of collective stupefaction? They are beautiful, certainly harmful and poisonous, but isolated and frightened like the class they represent. It was enough to see their furious anger this week. On the train back from Marseille, the week is over, I savored reading the press concerning this first week. The response of our adversaries was naturally as tortuous as we were straight to the point ourselves. But it was neither the right nor the far right that organized and carried out this counterattack. That was the media sphere supported by the old left, EU left. The two converged in a single tactic to attack us, to disqualify us in the first, wronging them in the second. A criminal attitude whose result can only be the strengthening of the RN. The worst chatterboxes were mobilized, often using the same language, word for word. Let's savor words from the spokesperson of France's most divided party. No one wants him neither on the left nor in the country. He speaks not of himself or the strong, but of me. Savory? Because he doesn't realize the effect he's having. And Cho, BFM, the channel of the Sahad Empire, displayed a very collector's screen while Clémence Jeté was speaking. Yeah, Bardella would get 48, 25 votes, and I would keep them, but think about them. Because this technique of superimposing information on the same screen erases the content of rational discourse. Uten Odraya's announcements or shocking images, shayth images. Usage reflects this. The goal? To degrade meaning, to destroy reasoning in favor of emotion. The product for me is this passage on France Inter, where Benjamin Dummel almost called me a Hamas agent, and whose only result at the end was to know whether or not I'd given the finger in this on the basis of images provided from inside the studio. Here, in this poll posted by BFM, the big test is underlined by the scientific pseudo-interpretation of a number accompanied by two others after the decimal point. This week, Sahara's press group went wild in this exercise. After BFM, the platform launched at the same time as my interview, uploaded by the comedian Inas, claiming that 70% of French people see Mélenchon as a liability for the left. You can tell that this upsets them, but 30% do not think so. Nothing remains of the interview except the reuse by all the small PEVs of the regional press of the Ipsos poll adorned with degrading photos. Well, of course. To understand the value of this type of poll, we must never forget how 4 months before the 2022 presidential election, Ipsos gave me 8% voting intentions compared to 22% actual. But it gave 17% to PC, who got 4.8%, 4.5% to Jado, who got 4.8%. But I prefer to laugh at this bogus prediction. 30% who don't hate me, isn't that still too much? Who deserves these third-party pollsters? The suspicions of anti-Semitism that weigh on him are an absolute major factor, emphasizes Briston Tourier, director of IPS. So all this is a great bar, because no one believes that apart from a bunch of fanatical supremacists. Everyone knows that I am no more so than Blanche Gardin, Pope Francis, or the Secretary General of the UN, who have been accused of it, like hundreds of other brave and honest opponents of the genocide in Gaza and the fascist government of Israel in. Most people know that the accusation against me is basely political and the work of a small influential group in a narrow circle. So, the only question that arises is how the sample of dyers is composed there. Nothing more. Ultimately, what distress is revealed by this angry repetition lasting for months. We must never forget that these are deliberate lies produced to stupefy, the most comical and borders on the outright absurd. For a certain Serge Duchen of Euronews, my candidacy has even revived the idea of a primary on the left. This brilliant assessment was followed by a festival of quotes dedicated to harming me. And so what festival? The old left excels at destroying things better than any right. Here, quotes from Pekelel, Gedges, former parliamentary assistant to Mélenchon, Corbière, ex-professional, and the usual procession of backstabbers. In all this, not a word about the political line, the program, or anything else. Just polls thrown in our faces. The real political motivation is not even mentioned. Cautious. In any case, 2 days later, Duchesne had his fruit with the killing of the primary. The real effect of my candidacy on the political sphere lies elsewhere. It has started the presidential campaign, and from then on, everything mechanically accelerates. The political nature also abhors a vacuum. The picture must be completed, and everyone is in a hurry not to leave the box. They want to dominate free. It applies to left and right. Of course, the pollsters have already been installing undeclared candidates for months to form a complete picture and to create a spectacle filled only with personal issues. Oh, Sheila. Now, reality is about to begin. My bid and his rival worse in the center's vacuum. However, this is his future. Their goal is therefore to build this candidacy that would unite the two centers, right and left, from Philippe to Hollande and organize the real continuation of Macronism. This is literally François Hollande's message on Sunday politics on May 10. The next president may be left-wing, but to win, he believes he must speak to voters who voted for Emmanuel Macron or in the center. But there is a long way to go here, because the space is hardly homogeneous either. The establishment of a champion to represent it is not a given. Everything's accelerated since the centrist omelette. For one, Edouard Philippe asserted himself in Reims. On the other hand, Hollande hastened the end of the chimera of the Union of the Left without LFI. Hollande did it brutally by dismissing the candidates for the candidacy, like important people who had broken into his vegetable garden. They all come from the Green Group, and there too, things are not going well, since on June 6, a motion was tabled to terminate the Tendelier's candidacy outside the primary. In total, all that remains of all this is the display finally assumed by Hollande, Glucksmann, Vallot, and others of the grand coalition of the centers. Hollande has put forward his candidacy. This week has therefore sealed the end of a world and designated the winner of the great betrayal of NS and NFP. The rest has immediately collapsed. Here again, the effect of the rebellious candidacy was quite predictable. Our emergence forced the left on Montreux for the primary, to itself in the position of embodying legitimacy. But none of these many spokespeople benefit from it. At the primary meeting in Belle-Étoile, everyone spoke for themselves and against one or the other in a poor, half-hearted manner that fooled no one man. All was taken from the right one. Fort, Jouvet, and the entire swamp were brought to their feet by their own comrade, Boris Vallot. The PS group leader at the assembly has left the party leadership, along with other members of it, Oeki. He denounced the lack of democracy in the PS and the abuses of power by the leaders who sought to impose the primary by force. An additional side effect, the dislocation of the party's functioning. How can the socialist group be absent from the party leadership? This separation almost resembles the creation of a second PS. Here again, our method of federative organization produces a better result of collective work. 2 days later, the same Vallot packed up his session and convened a conference of currents that nevertheless paralyzed the life of this country. The success of my candidacy's entry into the water was thus immediately amplified by those who claimed to be preventing us from moving forward. The pitiful spectacle of the primary in La Bellevilloise, soon amplified by the explosion of the PS leadership, acted as an unforeseen second stage for the rocket we had launched on May 3. The media relentlessness of producing the aftermath of October 7, with the same arguments, produced the same abusive effect that had already amply united our bases. This spoke volumes about the ridiculous arrogance of the media political class of the old world of officialdom. For their part, the serious people who fight us, or who observe us as political analysts, have been careful not to do anything before having grasped the full impact of our deployment, to Niopio, to Iobolet. It has indeed taken place on a broad front line, deploying our entire arsenal of political combat. In this way, we believe we have achieved a flawless mobilization. The end of the week was the occasion for a new invitation above the primary. The private feedback has been positive from all those who understood what a suicide, the sidelining of LFI represented. Some have even taken a position in favor of an honorable agreement with one or the other in the event of the failure to set up the primary. From this point of view, a second process may be underway. I said this in my interview at the podium, for the reasonable. Better a good use of Mélenchon than an anti-fi suicide. El Niño is back. An event with serious consequences for the year. 2027, every 2 years, there is a warming above average of the surface of the water in the Pacific Ocean, the largest being on the planet. It forms a sea current all along the Pacific coast of the Americas. Its name is El Niño. Thus, at the level of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, the water, temperature, the winds, and the precipitation are disrupted. This disrupts, through a cascading effect, all the weather conditions throughout the world for several months. While its counterpart, the Niga, causes increased precipitation and flooding, the Niño is characterized by a sharp rise in temperatures and droughts. This phenomenon has existed for thousands of years and has been recorded since the beginning of climate records. However, global warming, which has already begun and is irreversible, is changing its intensity and frequency. This is when supernodes appear. The temperature anomaly of the ocean surface is no longer around 0.8 degrees Celsius again, but exceeds 2 degrees Celsius ice. The climatic consequences are then aggravated by superimposing the ongoing global warming. However, since the 1980s, Europe has been warming at a rate twice the global average. According to climatologists and meteorologists, the El Niño will return in the summer of 2026. What is special is that it will be stronger and more intense than previous times. However, since the atmosphere takes time to react, the warming impact of a line reaches its maximum about a year after onset of the phenomenon. According to climate experts, extreme weather events can be expected all over the world in 2027. Starting this summer, 2026, temperatures will be higher than last year's, which were already too hot. In a year's time, maximum temperatures could well be higher than the previous record of 2024, the hottest year on record. This year, we exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming threshold set in the Paris Agreement to maintain livable conditions. In 2027, it will be hotter than ever. The presidential election will be the year of the climate emergency, and therefore the urgency of active ecological planning. Thanks for listening to this note to the end. If you like our work, please like, comment with respect and kindness, and subscribe so you don't miss our next podcasts.